Hey everybody, this is Rydo and we're back to Yu-Gi-Oh! Solo Mode. So last time we did Wicked Dragon of the Hidden City. It's not even the right title, really. It should be Wicked Dragons with an S of the Hidden City. And I assume that's just a mistranslation because there was 8 dragons in the story for what little story there was. So we have 3 more single solo mode to do, so I'm trying to get ahead of the curve, and I want to basically not have any left to do at all this time around. So let's do Dimensional Observers of the S-Force. Mysterious Secret Society S-Force. Their missions will transcend various spaces and times and are supported by agents with unique abilities. New agents for the next generation have been assembled to respond to the ever-expanding field of activities. Is that perhaps that they are robots or something? I don't know. If anything, this kind of feels like this could be where all of the XYZ monsters came from in the spin-off Yu-Gi-Oh! Anime that introduced the concept of XYZ summoning and XYZ monsters as just a whole new generation of power creeped special characters. But then again, this story could not connect to that at all, and it would still totally work with all the other solo stories. Let's see. So, doesn't really look like a robot character so much as far as that picture. Let's hop into the story and see what they're going to say. They have giant armor, obviously, now that I can see the picture a little bit better. Secret society of higher scientific power called the S-Force, so scientists, although the difference between science and magic, I imagine, is not by much. It is comprised of agents that work to prevent crimes and disasters, which, okay, cool concept. Feels like something you could stick with throughout many years of new expansions in Yu-Gi-Oh! Or a spin-off Yu-Gi-Oh! Cartoon. Their mission is to span the entire time-space continuum, yet the extent of it is not revealed to the agents. Nevertheless, the senior agent gives the new recruits a rudimentary orientation explaining the Force. Wow, we are just going straight visual novel here now, where you have just a flat 2D character, and it's pretty old school for them to even be in the box. Almost always now visual novels have the character not boxed in, like they're coming in through a radio or video conference, but instead they're just standing in front of you talking. And there is definitely something that's very old school about most of the cards we see in Yu-Gi-Oh! Which, in fairness, 25 plus years of Yu-Gi-Oh! It would be old school. But even the newest cards feel kind of old school. New agents, welcome to the S-Force. Before we dive into a mission, allow me to first explain more about the Force. I'm Rappa Chiyomaru. Is that supposed to be that she's a rapper and that's Japanese English for rapper? Parappa the Rappa? Probably is exactly what that means. Chiyomaru is just a Japanese name as far as I could tell. I will be your guide today. It's a pleasure to meet you all. I'm aware that everyone has a different story about how they decided to join the Force. Perhaps you were wrapped up in an incident, or maybe you were scouted. Perhaps your goals align with the visions of S-Force. Perhaps you have been contracted from other organizations. Boy, they are leaving the options open there. I myself here am under orders of my village head. Some of you may have abilities that will be useful for S-Force. So now we've got some picture references. This looks like a vampire. This looks like a cowboy. Here you've got 2 skater characters. Then here you've got what looks like an electric attacking guy. fighting a spiky guy, maybe, or avoiding getting electrocuted. With a vampire and a cowboy, that kind of reminds me of Shadowverse, but there almost certainly would never be a crossover between Shadowverse and Yu-Gi-Oh! Because they're direct competitors. And in all fairness, Shadowverse was just crazy because they had made 8 different characters, each being a uniquely different type of character. There was a elf character, a vampire character, there was several others that I can't even remember at this point. But this leaves a very wide opening for the diversity of characters that you can have in a trading card game. Yeah, I somewhat recently played Lord of the Rings, the adventure card game, which is not a collectible card game. It's a deck building card game, so if you were to buy an expansion for it, if they were available, you would get all the cards in the expansion and then build whatever decks you want from there. But one thing about playing the digital version of Lord of the Rings, the adventure card game, was very much how it was all inconsistency with the Lord of the Rings universe. So you just didn't have very interesting cards. You had dwarves, and you had humans, and you had elves, all things you would have seen in Lord of the Rings. But then you were also limited into the type of enemies you would fight, so you were mostly fighting orcs or trolls or goblins or spiders or maybe a human every now and then. But and honestly, orcs, trolls, and goblins really boils down to mostly just fighting orcs. Whereas collectible card games will almost certainly do better if they are more open-ended, very open-ended, so you can make any kind of card you wanted. And even Magic the Gathering has had that problem where when they do a crossover, like for example, a couple years ago they did My Little Pony crossover because Hasbro owns Magic the Gathering, Wizards of the Coast, and My Little Pony. That doesn't make sense in the world, in the Dungeons and Dragons world of Magic the Gathering. So those My Little Pony crossover cards were sold exclusively as collectibles to never actually be played. And if you did play with them, it would be very weird because you'd have 1 to 5 My Little Pony cards, and then you would have a deck of 55 other Magic the Gathering cards that were just normal fantasy creatures. Anyways, back to the story. I'm not getting very far very fast here. It is these abilities that dictate our assignments. As a shinobi myself, so she is a ninja rapper girl. Interesting. So at least we are getting crossovers here with you're half ninja and you're half I want to say Harajuku girl, but I don't even know if that's really a phrase that's used these days. Half rapper, Japanese rapper character. I'm good with the shuriken and secret techniques that allow me to hide anywhere. Here at our base, the bridgehead, we observe many dimensions in times and spaces. See, this would really be the best story to have started with. Right after we did the tutorials, to take a step out from the tutorial solo modes to say, S-Force is what it's all about. This establishes the multiverse that is the, I guess, Yu-Gi-Oh! Multiverse that you should think of when thinking of the card games, and this establishes that people know this multiverse exists. Weirdly, the anime cartoon spin-offs of Yu-Gi-Oh! Eventually kind of do introduce this idea that is a multiverse, but I don't know if they really accomplish much with that idea in the long run. I'm half expecting that these images would be images from other solo stories, but they don't seem recognizable enough to tell. When we observe and detect a problem, we deploy to solve it. Commander, Justify sends the most suited agents for the missions via a warp gate. Commander Justify. Is it a human or is it a robot or an AI? The missions can be many things. Disaster response, saving lives, to prevent crime. We may even tail and apprehend suspects. Now, you're getting a list of potential actions that I wish the Yu-Gi-Oh card game could somehow emulate, instead of any game of Yu-Gi-Oh really just being defeating a bunch of enemies till you get your opponent's life points to 0. But it would be groundbreaking, certainly, and I think there's a lot of room for some groundbreaking in collectible card games. But it definitely would be groundbreaking if you could have different kinds of scenarios and different kinds of win conditions other than just reducing your opponent's life points to 0, saving lives, averting disasters, things like that. And there definitely are some card games like that where a win condition might be more randomized. Although then that is also more complicated of a card game, and at least at the beginning you want your collectible card game to be fairly simple. It doesn't stay simple over the years. It gets incredibly convoluted and complicated, but you want to start simple to grow your audience initially. No one knows when they will be needed for a mission. That's why it's important to train so you're always ready to go on a mission. There are many convenient facilities for that here. Before the next lesson, I believe it's time for some training. If you're prepared, you'll never have to worry. I guess that's supposed to be some kind of quote, and maybe in Japanese that makes more sense. Maybe that's a Japanese saying. See, even in that scenario intro really made it feel like it was talking to the player as much as it was talking to the characters. So, what will throw a monkey wrench in the idea that this should be perhaps introduced as the second solo mission after the tutorial is whatever this gameplay mechanic is that would make it unique. Seems like you just are attacking with these cards, looking at these pictures. These pictures are not descriptive enough at all. What makes S-Force decks unique? Many of the S-Force monsters have effects that are applied to enemy monsters in front of them, so it's a positional placement cards, which once that idea was introduced, they didn't really double down enough on it. It is definitely an idea that should have been implemented early in Yu-Gi-Oh! And the fact that it really wasn't makes it extremely late to the party, and there's just far too many normal cards and effect monsters that don't care what position the card is in. The effect applies not only to itself but also monsters in front of the other S-Force monsters as well. Use this to advantage by deploying multiple S-Force monsters to encircle your opponent in a pinch, although technically not really encircle. Let's see how this really plays out. So we have a strong attack monster. We're going to want to take it out or do something else. Use your S-Force cards to win the duel during this turn. Try summoning S-Force Edge Razor. Now, one of the problems I will say that you run into with the idea of positional placement is because it wasn't really a default thing and isn't used by almost, I'd say 98% of cards, you by default in Yu-Gi-Oh! Master Duel will just always play a card here when you click summon. It doesn't ask to if you really care, and they haven't programmed it particularly well in a way that that it could detect where you place a card in the 5 monster spots or one of the extra monster spots would matter or not. But on some small levels, it could potentially always matter. But you have to disable auto placement. Next, use its special effects S-Force Rappa Chiyomaru from your hand. So we click yes here. Now notice it didn't tell me specifically to put it in front of that character. Banish S-Force Gravitino from your hand to activate S-Force Rappa Chiyomaru. With this effect, special summon S-Force Platina from your deck. Okay. Activate that to banish a card. To summon this. Again, it's not really forcing me into any specific spot. Now activate S-Force Platina that has been special summoned from the deck. Use this effect special for summon the banished S-Force Gravitino. So we're going in circles a bit here. Special summoned S-Force Gravitino can activate an effect that adds S-Force card from your deck to your hand. Activate that effect. This effect will allow you to add S-Force Showdown to your hand from the deck. So I almost wonder if this example is going to end up having a monster in each slot, so it wouldn't even matter. When activated, S-Force Shadow has the effects to allow you to special summon one S-Force monster from the hand in defense position, or add one S-Force monster to your hand from the graveyard. This time try activating S-Force Showdown to special summon S-Force Orifice from your hand. This time implies that there was a previous time. Yeah, it does seem like we're going to end up with just 5 cards in 5 spots. Use S-Force Orifice, S-Force Razor Edge, and S-Force Platina as link material to link summon S-Force Justify. So we're not XYZ summoning, we're link summoning, which is perhaps a little bit easier to do as far as the summoning aspect compared to XYZ summons, because here I only need 3 effect monsters. But then the placement of multiple link summoned characters makes it a little more difficult. We're also seeing in the ratio as far as who's used these cards, the numbers are very low. Link summon successful. Proceed to the battle phase and use S-Force Justify to attack. Well, I was thinking something completely different was going to happen here. I thought we were going to fill up this field and then we were going to activate an effect, and because there was one card here facing this card, it was going to do something. I thought that was the general idea of S-Force. S-Force Justify will activate by targeting an effect monster on your opponent's field. This will negate the target monster's effect while moving its position to its own linked location. Attack your opponent's monster with S-Force Justify, then activate the effect to see what it does. Well, usually these scripted things don't say see what it does, they usually tell you exactly what it's going to do. That is way too many button prompts. I could see why nobody would want to play these cards unless they won at a very high rate. Just being asked so many questions. Even when I'm playing Zodiac Tri-Brigade, there's just too many actions and too many prompts to implement other actions. And yes, you need those prompts to implement actions if you want to be able to counter your opponent's actions, but it slows the game down a lot more than it would ideally do. The effect of S-Force Justify that relocates your opponent's monsters can be used even when you're not in battle phase. Try to drive your opponent's monster into a position where it's facing it or another S-Force monster. Keep in mind, as this will make it easier to utilize S-Force monsters' effects. Attack your opponent directly with S-Force Gravitino. That last part was just a little bit of extra instructions. So all that summoning of the 4 other characters were just to get enough characters on the field to link summon Justify. Well, that definitely feels like that's leaving a larger challenge now that we actually have to play. Let's see if we can pull it off without actually reading any hints or suggestions. So I guess the question would be the balance here, as far as just how many of these link summon monsters are important link summon monsters and how many of these monsters are perhaps not useful. This infinite impermanence also nullivates everything in this row, so kind of makes some sense to use that in the S-Force move, but kind of not. Let's try Rapaccio to start with. And then we'll try this. We're basically trying to do the same trick the second time. Add an S-Force card to your hand. We'll take the field spell and hope that's smart. Did that work? No. It said, if a monster you control would be used as a link material for an S-Force monster, this card in your hand can also be used as material, so there must not be a 2-star S-Force monster in this deck. No, there isn't. 3-star S-Force monster would be the first requirement. So we'll just end there and see if some of these traps can pay off somehow. Activating this card doesn't matter. Activating this card can irritate him by negating this ability, and this ability. Activating this card can special summon 2 things. Alright, so let's put this in defense mode. And then put this in defense mode. That. You can banish one S-Force cards from your hand and return this card. Special summoning an S-Force monster. See how that works. Turn this to your hand, special summon. That's something else. Feel like I'm definitely just going in circles here with that card, but this will work. Okay. S4 Showdown. Let's start with this. We take the lowest character here. Then we take this one. And then we take this one, I guess, are our options. That gets Justify. Justify is pointing at 2 cards here. I don't know if that does anything. I can activate this and banish this card. I can activate this, move this here. Can summon this, I guess. What could I summon otherwise? Doesn't seem like much. I definitely didn't need to special summon that. Let's try to see what this does. Take that one. Nope. Don't want to do that. Nope. Don't want to do that. Okay. This definitely is taking longer times. Banish all cards it's pointing to. Interesting. But by doing that, it didn't do any damage, so it let it attack. Plus 3 effect monsters. Let's not do that. Let's just end the turn. This definitely doesn't feel like a very good loner deck on the face of this. Like, there's some very weak looking cards. Let's just not activate any effects so we can potentially do more damage. And then, I mean, I can activate this card and then that removes one more card out of your deck and shuffles your deck. So it gives you a free shuffle. Is it a specific rule that if you link summon something, you have to include the previous link summon monster? Because that seems weird. Like, this is the only option here. And this really shows how I never really learned link summoning either. If I select this, then the second option by default becomes that. If I select this, then it becomes that. So yeah, it does seem like an unexplained rule here is just that to do S4s or link summons, you end up having to include the previous link summon monster. Unless this says somewhere here something special. Let's just go ahead and end the turn and move on. We are moving and destroying cards and their effects fairly well with this deck, but I feel like this is the kind of deck that if you could just play a little bit stronger, you would probably win regardless. Like a little bit stronger enemies. Let's go and try this card. And then summon here. Special summon that there. Special summon that. We summon now. And so you get this weirdness where link summon monsters sometimes will count for more instead of just one if they have material attached to them, but they don't always have material attached to them. Let's give this a try. Just keep on attacking until we win. Do I have enough resources to unlock this gate? Yes, even though it really is asking for 2 resources. They weirdly do seem like they're trying to get the number down to exactly 0. And I'd be more than happy if they did. I just don't see a reason to create what would be just an insane scenario where you would have a player who would have done the 30 to 40 solo missions but then was really struggling at getting even the easy victories done, and so he didn't have the right resources to unlock the gates to potentially try the more challenging duels. Let's hop into this next duel as we're at it. I guess you could pause now and read this if you cared. That would really just ruin whatever small enjoyment you might possibly have as far as hearing the story if you're looking at the first part of a story for one solo mission, then you're moving on to another part of the story later. I really don't have a clue as to which one. Okay, light and dark. Let's go with that idea. Can we find something that would be light or dark style? Something cheap. Light or dark. In the graveyard. Okay. See, I just don't think there is a card here. find the light card and put it in the graveyard, because it does seem like there's really only room for one light card. And we have another light card here. Discard one or light or dark monster. So we will now toss this into the graveyard. And then guess we're tossing another light monster. That allows me to special summon by then banishing a light and dark monster. Which, yeah, this feels like we're not even doing the S-Force characters anymore. If anything, it seems like we're now doing a chaos-based deck with maybe one S-Force character. Don't think there would be a great reason to choose any of these special summons. 23 maybe could get to 26 for some safety. Yeah. But this is playing with every single card I've got. So I'm putting all my eggs in one basket. And hoping that the opponent can't summon something to take care of a 2600 Link monster. But yeah, one game does not make enough of an experience to get well acquainted with the idea of S-Force cards. Meanwhile, our opponent is playing a big strategy. And his strategy just worked well for him. So well, I might straight up be better just quitting at this point. Yeah. And it's sad to say, but even if you were playing ranked play, it is just more logical to go ahead and retry if you have no cards and you can't do anything one turn. One turn is more than enough. That's also what makes a lot of tournament games boring, is that you potentially could have something that would have been the equivalent of several hours of chess gameplay, and in the fifth step both opponents may have already known that who is going to win, and you could just shake hands and concede and move on to the next game. True. Same is true for Yu-Gi-Oh! So then there is this element of, for lack of a better term, showmanship that is often asked of professional players to continue to play even though it's a foregone conclusion who's going to win. Whereas this time, by random luck of the draw, I have gotten Blackluster Soldier and been put in a much better starting position. just waiting till I can activate my ability, which I can't because he just banished my card. Which I guess it's kind of exciting to see Blockbuster Soldier defeated so single-handedly. Whoops, that was not one that needed to really be picked. Okay. I literally can't summon anything from the looks of it. I don't know what's stopping me from summoning monsters. So I'm just putting it in front of this guy, and he'll just banish it again. I think I'm screwed. So either I'm missing a strategy here, or I've just gotten really unlucky twice in a row. As long as Justify can banish anything he attacks first, it just leaves you open. And so I really don't know what card I'm looking for to bring the strategy to a better place. Discard that. And that just moves my card. I assume that's not going to work. Yeah, again. We'll give it one more try. This time I'm going second. Maybe that is part of the thing, is just having the ability to go second. I generally prefer to go second because it is fairly boring to go first and not be able to attack. Plus, you don't have the option to react to any cards if you go first. Hearthstone created an interesting idea around that idea. Where whoever went first was given an extra action, since in Hearthstone that you have like mana that you have to expend to play cards. Yu-Gi-Oh! Does not have that though, so it's no you couldn't really just get a coin for going first. You'd have to get, I don't know, some kind of very basic, very strong monster that you could summon or spell you could activate. Doesn't seem like there's any other options. I'm trying really hard to figure this out. See, that doesn't seem as bad. This time. That seems like we've got 2 cards on the field, we have 4 cards in our hand, and he has nothing. So I think that finally, on the 3rd try, we have a decent start. Okay. Let's go ahead and, I guess, summon this. And then activate this. We'll just toss that, I guess. And then special summon this. Special summon this. Take a spell card. Still not really sure what I'm doing, but it seems to me like it's working. I don't think there's a value in special summoning any of this yet, so let's do this and see what happens. See what this does. Activate this. One, two, three. And then let's see, what can we special summon now? Well, this feels like something fun to summon, at the least, so let's do it. One, two. This is almost certainly the wrong way to summon this type of character, by summoning just 5 regular characters. But I could see how activating this and then filling your graveyard with light and dark characters would potentially let you special summon more things. And I assume that there's a small chance I summon something and then that's just going to activate an effect. You can see what this does. No real reason to activate that. No real reason to summon that. No reason to activate that. So did I learn some great strategy in this battle? No. I just reset twice until I got lucky. And if anything, I would say quicker than normal. I've already recognized that S-Force cards are too difficult to really handle and too much work for the outcome they give you. I guess pause now if you want to read this. I'm going to drink some water while we're at it. Then we'll try the loner deck here and see if maybe it's a little easier. So I guess we have a field spell that will give us a Trickstar card. All of a sudden we're dealing with Trickstar cards. At some level, it definitely feels like the case here is they want you to always have 2 types of cards in decks. And that definitely seems like that's the Um, they seem to always want you to have two classes of cards working together. This time it would be S-Force and Trickstar cards. I was thinking that was going to get two cards on the field, and it didn't. I'm gonna take this one, I guess. See what that can do for us as far as summoning things. Banish your opponent's entire hand, and if you do, they draw the same number of cards. Interesting way to potentially make them run out of cards. And then we can banish that and summon Trickstar back to the field. Interesting. Go ahead and summon this. Activate this ability. Go ahead and take this, I guess. We can activate this and get a second shuffle. That way we can have this card instead. Okay. 2 light monsters for 1400. Let's start with that. Do this. Nope. Nothing's gonna work, is it? Yeah. Nothing's gonna work, so we'll just do the medium amount of damage there. And we'll do the least amount of damage there. We can, I suppose, activate this and send that back and put it in the attack mode, so then it can attack. So then this can attack. But that does seem like that's the end of it. Set this. Guess summon this. Still probably can't summon anything more than a 3. And I think we'll just win. Definitely doesn't feel like we're doing a major strategy here. He's buying himself just a little bit of time with defense position monsters. But honestly, I don't know if he's actually even buying himself enough time. Because I end this phase and feel like this effect is going to do 400 damage. So as long as these two were even alive next turn, I think I'd win. Yep. I don't even know what was actually activating those effects. It's all just so anticlimactic when you have these short solo modes, but I definitely prefer these short solo modes anyways. Let's see whatever small amount of finishing story they have. And once again, this is a solo mode that feels like you could very easily see them eventually getting around to making a sequel to, which maybe that means there was an S-Force expansion as far as a booster pack that was released for Yu-Gi-Oh! At some point, and at some point they may have already made an S-Force 2 expansion. Because that's really where I think this comes down to, is that each of these solo stories are based on some expansion of cards. Nice work. How was that? Got an idea of how the missions may play out? As a shinobi, I am confident in solo missions. However, I still go on missions with my seniors upon orders of the commanders. Again, this feels so much like this should have been the tutorial level, or at least the level right after the tutorial level. I'm sure you'll all be busy with similar duties soon enough. I think now is a great time to introduce my seniors. Some seniors you may work with, seniors being English translation, I assume, of senpai in Japanese. First is the aforementioned S-Force Commander Justify. He coordinates all of our missions. You may hear him speak when he gives an order, but in all honesty, I've never actually seen his face. So, big robot guy. Possibly no human in there, possibly just a robot. Does he always wear that heavy suit? We will never know. Next up is Lapswell, which looks like a vampire character with some robot arms and armor. I was shocked when I first saw him flying around and shooting beams, but despite his appearance, he's a very civilized person. He taught me so much, even about things unrelated to our missions. He came here from some distant dimension long ago, and has been part of the Force the longest next to Justify. Now, it'd be an interesting twist if S-Force are actually the bad guys, and they are just coordinating and controlling would-be heroes, sending them on unimportant missions, while the bad guys get away with doing their nefarious deeds unchecked. But I doubt we'll get anything complicated like that in this story. Oh yeah, this metal charm I'm wearing, I guess that's him talking. I did see this necklace. Lapswell told me they sell them at the store on the base. I bought one like his too. What do you think? Pretty eye-catching, don't you think? So, I don't see her actually wearing the charm. In the ways we've seen her presented, it's just been this one image. Yeah. Next, Professor Digama. He is an amazing doctor that runs our science teams. Are his hands attached? Doesn't seem like they are. Yeah, these guys really don't strike me as very good looking as characters. They look scary. But who knows? He develops lots of tech and equipment for us, like the dog tag that supports our mission. The training facility we were at is one of the facilities he decided to build one day. Although apparently he's been fixing up the base, and some have filed complaints about hallways and rooms changing. Last up is Platina. She's a lady with amazing powers. And she, most of all, looks like she is magical. This definitely feels like these characters are inspired, at least, by the main protagonist characters of Shadowverse. Although, again, magical girl, magical witch character is not that crazy, and it looks like there's some science in this magic that we're seeing. On top of that, you have to just generally assume that there's going to be similarities. Long-haired witch-like characters, tall, strong, powerful stances. She is just as mysterious as Justified, but her powers are known to interfere with the dimensions. But there's one thing we do know. Although she is usually a calm person, she is extremely scary when she is angry. Remember, never make Platina angry. Is it fair to make the only female character of this group the one that is extremely scary when she gets angry and not mention the emotions of any of the male characters? Probably not, but that would be my default thought too, is to say that, or imply that Platina might be the strongest if she was just if she got angry and out of control, or that she would be at least extremely stronger if she was angry and out of control. The senior agents I just introduced aren't just doing more missions than everyone else, which you'd think justifies not actually doing missions if he's potentially running the base and organizing who goes on what missions. I feel like they go into missions knowing more than the other senior agents. Boy, is that translated poorly. Where really you would have said knowing more than any of the other senior agents combined. Or there are other agents I have never, or so many great agents that I cannot name them all. Interesting how she corrected herself there. How about we show our seniors what we are capable of doing for the world and for the people? Which world? If you're introducing multiple dimensions, there's multiple worlds. Use your special skills and do your best in the missions. It'd be interesting perhaps to make a story around this idea of going to different universes and doing different missions, where the people on the S-Force were just bored and looking for adventure because they live in like a utopia world where there are no problems in the S-Force universe, so they have to go seek out other universes just for entertainment reasons. That's all for today. Thank you for your time. So again, no real plot there in any way. I don't know why it says gate clear. But yeah, we get introduced to those characters, we get introduced to the S-Force cards. It pretty much immediately tells me I don't want to play S-Force with S-Force cards, even though I actually have quite a few of them already. If anything, this just kind of makes it a bit of a shame. Obviously, this is not a candidate of a card pack to open. I have seen people actually play this card, but not with S-Force cards. Time Thief Redoer, I've seen people play with that too. But a lot of this is Time Thieves, a lot of this is Psy characters. So far, we haven't even made it to an S-Force character. There's an S-Force character. I wish I could make the picture bigger and see if she actually is wearing that medallion. But related cards, as far as S-Force, it gets you a whopping 13 cards. It's a really small amount. Where were we? In that. Let's see. We were here, I guess. Dog tag. A few S-Force characters and cards. And again, I would just say I have not seen anybody actually play a deck with S-Force cards. You have potentially 7,000 to 10,000 cards in Yu-Gi-Oh! And they seemingly are all broken it down into two or into groups of 13 or so cards, and that just is an insane number of groups. Maybe there's a hint as far as space-time transcendence in that this solo mode will at some point go further and have a sequel dealing more with time, because they really didn't get deep into the idea of going to different dimensions or going to different times. Right now the World Championship is also happening, not to particularly care. I didn't mean to go to the deck creation page. I wanted to scroll back on the solo pages. So yeah, said the gate was clear. There is nothing more that can be done. There's no sequel story now. Yeah. And what would be interesting to try to figure out is when was the last time we even had something that had a sequel story, because that would give me a general idea of how far back they are as far as introducing continuations to solo stories versus introducing new stories. I wouldn't be surprised if it's actually really, really far back, all the way back to the really, really long one. This is a crazy amount of sound effects as it loads each time. And it definitely feels like some of these stories further back had at least the beginnings of a full story, where now it really just seems like we're going through solo modes that are teases, or perhaps just very generic explanations of what the cards do. And it's all just a little too slow if you're going to do a solo mode, and it's just going to give you a very generic explanation of what that card series does. It also seems like we've stopped seeing these really long solo missions. Konami does put out surveys infrequently asking people to say how they're what they would like to see as far as new content and how they feel like it's going. I feel like the surveys are almost certainly getting worse and worse negative reviews. People are not super happy with Yu-Gi-Oh! Master Duel just for the reason, here it is, yeah, it's this Legend of the Star Heroes was the last time we've had any second thing. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17 solo modes have happened since the last time we had a sequel. So maybe they've just given up on the idea of having sequels, but they haven't embraced the idea of actually like improving a solo mode section to actually stand on its own 2 feet and be better quality in general. But yeah, throughout the surveys, when I answer them, as far as how people are interested in or how well it's going, the emphasis always in me is to say not focus on the solo story and focus on improving the main game, because as insane as it may sound, and obviously this is the newest solo content that was added, they have done considerably worse as far as improving ranked play or free duel or event duels. They've given us far too many event duels back to back, which overwhelmed a lot of players, and the event duels have been far too consistent in that it's really just giving you some kind of limitation on what kind of cards you can play. So you have to play some new kind of deck, almost exactly like you have to play new kinds of decks in solo mode, except for you're playing against other people, and you're often being required to enter the event tournaments to win considerably more, which is taking up way too much time. People are not happy in general with Yu-Gi-Oh! As far as the ranked play. There's nothing really wrong with the computer Master Duel software on that part, although maybe the timer could be adjusted a little bit. But in general, people are not happy with the current meta game that is happening, where you either lose on your second or third turn with very little chance of succeeding, or best case scenario, you win on your second or third turn, but you have to spend about 5 minutes summoning monsters, activating effects, re-summoning other monsters, and just going through incredibly large loops of that. And yeah, it just makes the game too long and not varied enough. To the point where I'm still playing Zodiac Tri-Brigade after I tried to play Floander and Tier Limits. Here's another deck I'm considering, but it can't actually craft because I don't have enough crafting points. And half the cards you get are not dismantleable. I have 9 copies, 10 copies of this Guard Dragon Justica. Can't dismantle the 7 redundant unnecessary copies for crafting points. Having separate types of crafting points doesn't help either. So if I wanted to generate all the cards to make this deck just to experiment with it, I can't do it. It would cost me 60 rare crafting points, which I do have, and 120 super rare crafting points, which I do have, but it would cost me a huge 570 ultra rare crafting points, which I do not have. I am 275 ultra rare crafting points short. Meanwhile, I have such a surplus on normal cards as far as crafting points that I've just been spending my time, when I have a free second or so, finding all the normal cards that I don't have and just crafting one copy to slowly create a scenario where I potentially have one copy of every card, digitally speaking, and that doesn't mean too much. All I can tell you as far as how far I've gotten percentage-wise is from this point to this point, I own at least one card, and from this point to this point, I don't own any. If I get all of these in for normal cards crafted, this scroll bar would be further down, but 3,604 crafting points for normal is not even really that much. It wouldn't make a lot of progress towards that. But yeah, you just don't get that variety. So pre-built decks, like every single one of these, I have never engaged with any of these decks. I think maybe when I started very at the beginning, I maybe played with Synchro of Unity. Then once I, in solo mode, unlocked Beings Who See the End of the World, or whatever this deck is called, I played that. And that worked very well for me until I went online and crafted Zodiac Tri-Brigade, which worked way better. Like these decks, these pre-built decks really suck. I may have tried Link Generation for a while. And even if you did want to experiment, by default you only have 25 deck slots, 22 of which you can see are already taken up. Then they want you to spend gems to unlock more deck slots. You can potentially destroy your pre-built decks. Like here's one I haven't even looked at that I bought. This is the newest pre-built deck to be sold in the store, in the shop, so I purchased it. And by purchasing it, I think 3 times, I guaranteed that I had 3 copies cheaply of ultra rare cards, which is very nice. But again, I don't think it's cards that I can then dismantle if I have extra cards. But yeah, you can take any of these pre-built decks and copy them to well, the game just crashed. Interesting. But any of those pre-built decks you can copy to make one of the decks you actually are playing of the 25 deck slots, which means also you can just delete pre-made decks and use the deck slots for other things, which means there's really no reason you would ever actually pay for more deck slots. It would be wasteful. And that's another problem certainly with Yu-Gi-Oh! Master Duel, is that the ways they are trying to monetize, I suspect, are not making them very much money. And if it weren't for the fact that Konami has a vested interest in keeping Yu-Gi-Oh! Popular, you would almost certainly see a case where this game would be abandoned. And there's still a high chance that will happen because there's so many other Yu-Gi-Oh! Games that they've made and abandoned. Yep. They have also updated the main screen now, so if you sit for even a few seconds, you will start to see the scenario storylines of the solo mode stuff, which that very well should have been the better way to do this in the first place. Just get rid of the solo mode and instead turn it into a narrative mode where you don't have to play at all and you just get the story told to you. Alright, well, I don't really have anything else to say, so that's going to be it for this recording. As always, I ask you to like, share, subscribe, comment, and watch every second of my videos. If you want to support me further, there's some links down below in the description box. Thank you for watching. Have a good evening.